The Metafields system in Shopify is something that has been evolving continuously since Online Store 2.0 in 2021. In June 2021, shortly before the new Metafields system was announced, I showed you how to add Metafields in Shopify without needing an app via this hidden bulk edit URL. But then, of course, Shopify announced a huge update to Metafields where you could now seamlessly edit Metafield definitions and values through the admin via these new sections. In my July 2021 video, I showed you the new features, including dynamic linking, a feature where you could add Metafields directly to fields in your customizer without needing to touch any Liquid. Since then, however, Metafields have evolved again. In my video discussing Shopify Editions Summer 2022, I briefly covered some of these updates, including the rollout of the functionality, which was previously limited to just products and variants, to other objects as well, such as collections, customers, and orders. I also mentioned the new ability to add in a list of values to each field as opposed to single values, which previous to this was the only possibility. While these changes sound kind of simple, it's further complicated how we use Metafields in Shopify Liquid. So in this video, let's take a refresh look at how to use Metafields within Shopify Liquid code. All right, guys, so in order to demonstrate using Metafields in Shopify Liquid, I've got my development store open here. This is Chris testing shop 3 with test data, and I've got a fresh install of the Dawn theme. I just installed this recently, so there has been no changes. So it's a pure Dawn theme that we will modify in this video. And there's a little bit of setup to get this underway. Some of the setup I've done for you. I've created a page template here that I'm going to bring in. You can just go to this address. It's in my Skillshare repository on my GitHub. As you can see here, this repository is where I keep all my resources for my YouTube videos and Skillshare classes. All right, so we're going to use that in just a second, but first of all, let's set up the Metafields. Now, because this is a new store, we have no Metafields, and I thought it would be the cleanest to create the Metafields on the page object. So, sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit there, but to get to the Metafields section, you just go into settings, and then you scroll down to custom data. This, I think, has changed in the last 6 months, so it's constantly changing. So don't at me if this has changed again since the recording of this video. All right, and then we're going to go down to the pages object. Here you can see the last time I made a video on Metafields, we only had products and variants. Now we've got all these objects here to use, okay? So I'm going to make it on the page object, and I'm going to add a whole bunch of definitions, and then we're going to see how we can output them with Shopify Liquid. If you're very familiar with Metafield definitions and creating them, you can feel free to skip this part. I will put chapters in the video, but if you want to follow along, you can follow along with me right now. So step 1 is going to be to create the Metafields, and then we're going to add the data for the Metafields, okay? So first definition, I'm just going to do simple text, all right? And custom.simpletext is fine. And then in the type, single line text, one value, done. Save that. Then I'm going to do a list of text. So this is a pretty new update. I think this was in July 2022 or June 2022. You can now add a list of values. So we can take that simple text and do a list. And I'll just get rid of that other underscore there. So it's just simple text list. And then we can go down here, select single line text again, but now we can set it to be a list of values. So this is very interesting. All right, I'm going to hit save. And now we've got our simple text and our simple text list. Let's do the same thing with images or media. So I'm going to go in here, call this one media, custom media, go in here, scroll down, where is it? To file. And then in file, you can set it to accept all file types or just accept images and videos, which is essentially media. All right, so that should be all good. I'm going to hit save on that. And let's drag that down to here. All right, let's do a list of media now. I'll call it list of media. And then we'll do the same thing again. We'll grab a file and we'll create a list of files, and we will accept only images and videos. All right, hit save on that. There we go. For the next one, I'll do a product. We can target a single product. So actually, I'm going to call it single product. And I'll go in here and click product, one product, no more options to select. Hit save on that. We'll add a list of products now. List of products. Go in here, select product again, choose list of values. So the reason why I'm creating a single and then a list of everything is to show you the difference once we actually get into the Liquid code. And then to finish off here, I want to show you JSON. So this is really cool. We can store a JSON object and we can actually access attributes of this JSON object in Shopify Liquid, which is really cool. So I can click JSON here and we can add in a schema, which will be like our default JSON object. So I'm going to set it up to be basically a person. So let's just say this object is a person. I'm going to give it name and I'm set that to blank because it's just a placeholder. And then I will set the gender to blank to start with. And then when I populate it, I'll add a value for that. So I'll hit save on that. We've got JSON. And as if that wasn't exciting enough, you've got meta objects now. So you can store a meta object in a meta field. I might cover meta objects in another video. But here you can go in here and where is it? Meta object. Okay. And you can actually do a list of meta objects. So you're going to hit save on that. And yeah, I need to create a meta object first. So that's going to be a blocker on this one. So I'll just go into here. Actually, I'll go into the place where it's a bit easier to reach. So you can go into content here, meta objects, add a definition. As I said, I'm going to do a person for the JSON. I'll do a person for this one as well. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do name. Yep. One value. I won't do any validation. And then I'll do another one for gender. And then I will do validation for this. It's either going to be male or female. Actually, in order to be politically correct, I better put other as well. Okay, there we go. And I'll hit save on that. And now I've created this person meta field. So that should hopefully mean that I can refresh over here, meta object, go into here, select meta object. And now I can select person. Okay, so now the user can select any person meta object to go into this meta field. Very meta, I know. All right, so I'll drag that one down the bottom of the list. Okay, so now we've got our meta object, which I've created, and we've got 8, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different meta fields here. So in this video, I'm going to show you how we work with all of these in Liquid. All right, so I'm going to keep this open. Let me duplicate my URL here and let's get out of that and let's do the next part, which is to add a page and then add values to those meta fields on that page. So I'm going to click add page, call this Metafields demo. All right, and then if I hit save on that, and scroll down, you can see Metafields here and I can show all. So here what I'm going to do is put in a whole lot of dummy data. All right, so the first one is just a simple line of text. So you can get in here, pretty self-explanatory. I'm just going to put in a person's name, John Brown. But then as you can see here, simple text list, we can add different items. So I'm going to put in John, but I'm also going to put some of the other most common names in the world, Maria and Mohammed. All right, so yeah, I can add as many as I want, reorder them. It's a pretty cool system. All right, so there you can see we got 3 items there. In media, I'm going to select a file from my store. So there we go, we got our media added there. And just like list of text, we can add in a list of media. So let's add in 3. And then we can actually link a product. So let's just do, there we go, that snowboard. List of products, exact same concept again, but for products. So I'll grab 3, there we go. And then here for JSON, I'll put in name, So I'll just do it the same as the meta object. I'll do it a person object. So Christopher, which is my name, and gender male, right? And then down here for the meta object, I'll be able to select a person entry, but there are none. So I need to actually create a new entry, right? So I'm going to put this in, Christopher, and then I can select from validation options which gender I am, which is male. I'll hit save on that. And then I can head back here and you can see that it links that meta object. All right, so if I hit save on that, that is all the back end that we need to do. And now let's get on to actually doing the Shopify Liquid. All right, so here you can see all the values. If I go into the settings and go into custom data, you can see that if we go into the page object here, you can see all the list of Metafield definitions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put both of these on the same page so you can see how we can access these values in different ways, okay? And that's the point of this video. It's not as simple as just writing one line to get this or one line to get this. We actually have to do a little bit more to get the exact result that we're looking for with Shopify Liquid, which is why I created this video. All right, so now I'm going to go into edit code. And here what I'm going to do is, I seem to have lost that tab, so I'll bring it back. The one from GitHub. And here you can see my code for page.metafields.liquid. This is my custom page template I created. You can see the layout false tag above here so that it doesn't load any of the surrounding layout. And it's got CSS in here already. So yeah, it's going to look a lot nicer on your screen if we use this. So what I'll do is I'll click raw and I'll grab the raw code for this. And then I will go in here, create a new page template with Liquid, and I'll just call it Metafields or whatever you want to call it. Then I'll throw in my code here. I'll hit save. And then the final step is to go back to our pages here, go into Metafields demo, and then select that page template that we just added. Should be there, Metafields. And just a quick side note for anyone who's new-ish, that page template needs to be on the live theme. Otherwise, it won't show up in this dropdown. Okay, so if you are working on a preview theme, you still need to create the template. You don't need to put in any special code, just you need to create the template in order to be able to select it in the admin. All right, so that was quite a bit of setup, but now if we actually go back here and I click view page, now you can see our little setup here and we can actually run through the Liquid. So in order to edit the Liquid, I'm going to go into our theme here and click edit code. And now what I'm going to do is run through the different types that we've got listed here. So this should, I'll close that down. This matches the metafields that we just set up. Text, we've got single value, list of values, image, single, list, products, single, list, JSON, and meta object. All right. So let's go into here, and in this first little slot here, this raw code, by the way, allows us to output raw Liquid code to the screen without running it, okay? Because if we just put it in here, it'll actually run. If we put it inside these raws, it won't run, and it'll also output that raw code to the screen so we can see what we're doing, okay? So in order to figure out what to put here, we can easily go back to our Metafield definitions, and underneath the bolded text, you can see the path to get to that. So we can literally just put this into our Liquid. So I'll select that, press Control C or Command C before it clicks into that. And then I'll just paste it here in between our raw tags and then replace these quotations with that as well. So I hit save on that. I'll open up the page over here and you can see the first line in our little cheat sheet come up. So if I just put word for word page.metafields.custom.simple text, which aligns with what's here, for a simple text metafield, we get the value coming straight out. But as you'll see as we go throughout, usually we're going to have to chain a dot value on the end. All right, so let me do that right now. If I go here and do a dot value, and do the same thing here, dot value, and then I'll hit save, refresh over here. You'll see we get the exact same result for text, okay? Text is a kind of special one. With all the other ones, you'll see there is going to be a difference between if we do dot value or if we don't chain dot value, okay? So let's look at text list. Let's go over to here, copy that address, and then I will paste it here, and then let's paste it here as well. All right, so I hit save, refresh over here. And as you can see, if I type in the simple text list, we're going to get this string come out with the notation for an array. So these square brackets, we're going to get the double quotes signifying that these are strings, and then we get the comma separating these values. So if that's what we get when we just put that in, what happens when we chain a dot value? Let's test that out right now. So I'll go inside here and do dot value, and then here, just need to put in opening and closing liquid tags there, and I'll put in value. Hit save, refresh over here, and you can see the values come out. They're not comma separated. They don't have any of the notation around them, okay? So that's not particularly handy, but all we need in order to address these individually is to use a loop. So what I'm gonna do is substitute this for something that loops through that value, okay? Let me format this a little bit nicer, and I'll explain it for you guys. So we get this list here in the simple text list.value metafield, and so I'm creating a loop here. We're going to grab each item as text, but then you've got this little bit of extra code here that says if it's not the last item, put a comma in, and that allows us to separate those values visually. All right, refresh over here, and you can see now we've got that list. All right, and we can, for each of these text values, put any sort of logic we want in between here. Okay, now let's move on to images. So again, let's look at the value without value. So if I just bring this into my code up here, and then replace these quotes, and then I'll hit save on that. Let's have a look at what happens. You can see we get this GID, which gives us the sort of back-end reference to the media or image, but it's not particularly helpful in this instance. So this is where we need to put in the value. So I'm going to chain dot value to the end, hit save, and then we can see the URL to that particular image. But this is not particularly helpful either, because we have to run this through the image URL filter or the image tag filter in order to get a workable URL. So what I mean by that is if I go in here, let's go down to here, and then I will put the image URL filter there. Let's put it over here as well. I'll hit save on that, refresh, and that'll give us the fully formed URL from the Shopify CDN, which if I wanted to, I could grab, open a new tab, paste that, and view it. All right, so that gives us the actual URL. But if we want, we can replace this with image tag, and it'll create an image tag for us so that we can actually view the image inline. And there you go. All right, so what happens when we have a list of media? Well, again, it's slightly different, which is, yeah, again, the point of making this video is there's slight differences between all of this. So I wanted to dive a bit deeper. So here, if I copy the list of media object, and then I put that here, let's have a look at what comes through with list of media. As you can see, we get the GID again, but it's a list of values. So it's coming back inside these double quotations to show that it's a string separated by a comma or within the square brackets, which signifies an array. Okay, so we got this wacky code here. Maybe we can use it in some JavaScript, but not very useful. Let's see what happens if I copy this over and I chain dot value. Refresh over here, and as you can see, you get media list drop. Now, for those of you guys who are new here or aren't familiar, anytime you see this with the word drop at the end, it means you're looking at a Shopify Liquid object. You can't actually dive into it unless you JSON log it or go into one of the attributes, right? But what we're getting here is a Shopify Liquid object, okay? So it's a bit different to the value on the actual image. It doesn't give you an image object. It gives you this path, this file URL. Here it gives you the object, all right? But it's not the image object. It's a media list object, right? So we have to loop through this. So what I'm going to do is start this off, put a for loop in here, and then inside each iteration, let's output the image. All right, so I'll grab that, put it into here. Let's format this a bit nicer. All right, so let's see what happens when we loop through that object. I'll refresh over here. And as you can see, now we get these sort of values coming through, all right? But again, not particularly useful. We're gonna have to treat that the exact same way we treated media.value up here by passing it through the image tag filter or the image URL filter. Let's just skip ahead to putting in image tag, right? And then I will throw it in up here too. There we go. And then I'll hit save, refresh over here, and we get all three images. Okay. Now let's look at products. Products are near identical to how images came out. So let's have a look. I'm going to write in all the code here and then save it once, and then we'll have a look. So I'll let's go over here, grab the root here. What was it? Single product, page.metafields.custom.single product. I should have that in my clipboard now. Yep. So we'll just grab the single product. Then for this one, we'll do .value, see what happens, .value. And then here, actually, I'll show you what comes back for .value. So as you can see, we get that GID reference if we don't use .value. And then if we use .value, we get product drop, which as I mentioned before, anytime we see drop, we know that's a Shopify object. So we've got the product object here. So what I'm gonna do is go into here, chain .value, and because we're looking at a product, I can chain .title. So let me copy that and put that down here. I'll hit save, refresh over here, and we get the title of that product. Now, for me, I don't particularly like how this looks. I find this a bit confusing. We've got single product value.title. The value is representing a product object, but in order to make this a little bit more readable, what I like to do is first assign and put that into an object called product, and then we can use that object. Now that we know we have a product in this product object, we can now just output that. So I'm gonna copy that, put it over here. We're gonna get the same result. If I refresh over here, same result, but as you can see here, after we've assigned it, we can now say product.title, which I think is just nicer in the code to read. Okay, but you can do it the other way as well if you only need one value and need to skip ahead. But often you need multiple values off of this one product object. So it's nice to assign the product object to a variable first. Okay, so let's move on to the list of products. Again, I'm just going to insert a few first before I hit save and have a look. So I'll grab the list of products here, and like we did before, just put them in without the value. Then I will chain the .value, and let's have a look now when we look inside .value. So similar to the media list up here, you can see we're getting a list of GIDs when we don't put the .value, and when we put the .value, we get product list drop. So as you can see up here, product drop, product list drop is just an array of these product drops. Okay, so what we're gonna do is create a loop, but as I mentioned before, I think it's nicer to put this into a variable with a name that just makes more sense. So the value is representing a product list, so I'm going to call this product list, okay? So I'll type that in there, and so this the value is the actual product list object. That's going to go into product list. And then now I can cycle through this product list. So I can do product in product underscore list. I like to do my end tags before writing any more code. And then I can just go in here and say product, right? So I'll grab that code, copy it over here so we can view it, hit save, refresh over here. And as you can see, we do get that list of product drop, product drop, product drop, okay? So again, not very useful. We need to actually grab some data off of that. So we can just do product title. Yeah, we'll just grab the product title, but we can grab any attribute off that product object. So you're gonna hit save, refresh over here, and you can see the different titles here. And I added in that extra box here so you could do both. So just for completeness sake, I'll do it as I was planning and just put title. The indenting is a little off here. Apologies for that. Not a perfect editor, the online code editor. All right, and then yeah, you get the same result as before. So now let's look at these objects. JSON I found particularly interesting because JSON is typically, it's JSON, it's JavaScript object notation. So it's more for JavaScript than it is for Shopify Liquid, but you can actually go into a JSON object metafield and you can grab different values of it, which I think is really cool, just like you would a meta object. So sometimes you might not even need a meta object. You might just be able to store it as a JSON object. Obviously, meta objects are more user-friendly, but for whatever reason, you might need to use JSON. Anyway, without jabbering on too much more, I'll just show you what I mean. So I'll go over to here, copy this right here, and then I will replace this. And let's see what happens when we grab the JSON. So as you can see, we just get the JSON object outputted as a string. If we put this into a JSON parser, this would be valid JSON, and we could use it in our JavaScript. But what's interesting in Shopify Liquid, if I chain a dot value to this, and I hit save over here, we get a different notation, right? So instead of the colons, we get this, which is interesting. Again, not particularly valuable, but if we want to dive into one of these attributes, we can in the Shopify Liquid by chaining again on .value the name of that attribute. So one of them was name, one of them was gender. We can actually access the name attribute, the name property on this by just chaining .name. So if I hit save on that, refresh over here, now you can see that I can actually grab the values from a JSON object if it's stored in a meta field, which is pretty interesting to me because, like I said, JSON is usually only a JavaScript thing. All right. Now, finally, meta objects. I think meta objects should operate in a pretty obvious way. I mean, by this stage, you should probably be able to guess what each of these values are going to produce. So let's grab that last meta field here. Not sure if I grabbed that enough time before it opened the link. I'll copy that. So let's put that in here. So we'll see what it looks like if we just output the meta object. We output its value. Let's save that and check back over here. So as you can see, yep, without the value, we get the GID. With the dot value, we get the actual liquid object signified by the drop at the end. And then if I go in, can't actually inspect it the same way you would JSON. So you can see here the attributes, but we know from the object we created earlier that it was a person object with a name and a gender. So we can go in here, and once we have that meta object, we can just chain and then put the attribute on the end, just like we did with the JSON. So we'll do .name on the end, hit save, refresh, and we get Christopher. How interesting. We can also do this for the gender, as I mentioned. So any attribute on that meta object that's linked to that meta field. So I'll swap over here and we get male as the gender. So if you're anything like me, you might be wondering, why do we even need this dot value? It kind of confuses, at least it confused me in the beginning, why we need this dot value, because up here we could just do simple text without the dot value and we get that value, right? But then you get different results if you don't use dot value. And the reason why is because there is on any meta field a dot value, but also a dot type. So if I grab the meta field object here, go into here, and instead of dot value, I will do dot type. Okay, I'll hit save on that. And then I'll go over here, refresh, and you can see the type is meta object reference. So with meta objects, and this is in the documentation too, I'll just bring up the documentation for Liquid. And if we go into objects and we look for the meta field object, so just scrolling down, these are in alphabetical order. Meta object, meta field is just above that. You can see that we've got type and value. We've also got list question mark, which will return true if the meta field is a list type, false if not. But you could also just check the type as well. But I mean, you might be looking for lists of different types, right? So if you want to actually grab the value, grab the stored value of that meta field, which could be an object. It might not be as simple as a line of text or an image. It might be another object in itself. You can use value, or if you want to determine what type that meta field is, you can use dot type. And as you can see, here's a lot of different types. So heading back up here, just to drive this home, if I go over here and I type dot type on top of these and I hit save, refresh over here, you can see that the type of this simple text meta field is single underscore line underscore text underscore field. And what that'll allow you to do is in your Liquid, double check the type of the meta field before you start to work with it. So if you've set up the meta fields yourself, you probably don't need to check the type beforehand, because if you've created this meta field and you know it's a string, you know it's a simple text, you might not need to check it, but you have that option there in order to check it. And so you can see that on any object, you have type and value, and the type tells you the type of the meta object, and the value is the actual value that we set. So if we go back to our page, the actual value that we set on that meta field, what we put in these is the value. Okay? So quite in-depth video about meta fields. Here's the cheat sheet right here. I'll leave this on my store right now for you guys to check out if you are watching this in the near future. This is subject to change at any point, but you can always go to that repository to find the cheat sheet. You just need to fill in these values yourself. And that's pretty much it, guys. So that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to see more on Shopify Metafields, you can watch my other two videos on Metafields that I'll link here, as well as my channel icon right here, so you can subscribe to the channel. You can also find links to more resources on Shopify Liquid in the description box below. And that's it, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.